Strange to say that I'd grown used to the relative silence of Tia Tanya's bed and breakfast in the few short weeks I lived there when I'd been the only other guest. Of course, Vera had lived there for the short time she'd been in Brookhaven, before her murder, but it still felt unnatural to have another boarder just 2 doors down the corridor from me. One would think the unassuming man who'd taken up residence in room 6 would have been easy to overlook, yet I was acutely aware of his presence. Maybe it's because he served as a stark reminder of the unfinished business in this house. Walter Lawson, our newest boarder, had come to Brookhaven looking for his missing sister Mackenzie. He was convinced she had come to town and was still here, even though the police had found her ID and phone among Vera's belongings. Plus, the town's chief of police, Rick Hayes, had determined that the woman who Walter believed to be his sister was in fact Vera Chase, girlfriend to a dangerous New York drug dealer. That drug dealer had hunted Vera down, killed her for stealing from him, and tried to frame me in the process. That mystery still hung like a thick cloud around the bed and breakfast, even as the summer sun shone through the windows in the kitchen in early September. I stood there, coffee mug in one hand, studying the way the plant in the hanger by the window reached toward the sunlight, as if it had never felt the warmth from above before. In the back of my mind, I heard it whispering of its hunger. Since I'd come to stay, Tanya had been placing potted plants all over the house. She claimed it was to help keep the air clean. I suspected she had ulterior motives. It was nearly impossible for me not to hear the call from the greenery around the house, thanks to my hedge magic. I was still very much a novice at my craft, and I had a hunch this was Tanya's not-so-subtle way of forcing me to practice using my skills on something other than marijuana seedlings. "All right," I sighed, as I watched the plant struggling to open its leaves. Setting my mug on the table, I moved to stand by the planter and gently pinched the stem below the leaf that remained curled up. I focused on envisioning what the plant could be if it were only able to open up and soak up the much-needed sunlight. The tips of my fingers grew warm where they made contact with the stem, and I heard the soft crinkle of a leaf unfurling. When I opened my eyes, the pigment in the leaf had brightened, and its whispers of hunger had faded. "You should feel good about that," Tanya's voice said from the other end of the kitchen. I turned to see my landlady standing there in a sleeveless blouse the color of red wine and a floor-length skirt in a complementary dark purple hue. Even just a few short weeks ago, her statement would have both baffled and discomfited me. Tanya is an empath and not shy about reading people, especially in the confines of her home. It barely needed my help, I noted, and reclaimed my coffee. "Don't sell yourself short, Darcy. You've been practicing, and it shows," she said with a smile. "Someone hasn't given me much choice," I noted, gesturing into the dining room where she'd placed a window box full of newly sprouted daisies. She chuckled. "I have gone a little overboard, I suppose." I tried to tell her that, but no one ever listens to me. Sam, the bed and breakfast resident ghost, bemoaned as he materialized wearing a pair of skin-tight leather pants and a sparkly sequin jacket. "My hero," I teased. I still knew very little about Sam. He was the only ghost I'd ever met. His clothes oscillated between flamboyant and verging on a 70s-era Elton John impersonator. I'd made several mental notes to ask Sam about his existence and extensive wardrobe, but had never found the right time to broach the subject. "Am I interrupting something?" Walter's voice cut into the conversation before Sam could throw a snarky retort back at me. Despite the fact that Walter had some form of magic, he still couldn't see Sam. Maybe because Sam hadn't warmed to him yet, or perhaps because he hadn't used his magic much since arriving in town. Besides, it wasn't like he had to hide his abilities. As Tanya had told me when I'd first settled in Brookhaven a month ago, this town was a safe place for those with magic and other supernatural gifts. "Nothing important," I said, waving Sam away as I downed the rest of my coffee and set the mug in the sink to soak. "I was just getting ready to head to work." "I'll walk with you," he offered, and pivoted on his heel to open the front door.